And we also won a Leimert Park Village stop because we had high hopes of bringing business into the Leimert Park Village area for the Leimert Park Village merchants. And we thought that that was going to be the answer to our prayers. And we also resisted gentrification and challenging developments that were not in the interest of the Black community. The Crenshaw Subway Coalition objectives when founded: ensure that the rail line is built in the manner requested by the community. In the manner requested by the community. Number 2, ensure the rail line is built by the community. Number 3, ensure that economic projects that are a project of the rail line are community driven and based on principles of local economic empowerment. And I am now going to turn this back over to Greg Akili.
And one of the things that we did was we hosted one of the things that the Crenshaw Subway Coalition did was host one of the largest anti-gentrification convenings back in December in recent history. And that just, I think, goes to show you the people's interest in defeating and preventing gentrification. I'm going to talk for a minute about some of the Crenshaw Subway Coalition's community development, but I also want to remind people that we're going to cover a lot of information today, and we're going to do it through this virtual process, and we've had some glitches so far. We may have 1 or 2 more, but we ask for your patience and to come along with us. We want to share information and share our vision. So be patient, come along with us. I want to start out with some general principles of community-centered development. And I think that we have to focus on that. The right to self-determination. We believe that people of color, Black people and people of color, have a right to space to cultivate their culture, maintain their unique history, develop institutions, build political power, and define their community's future. The right to housing. We believe that decent housing is a human right. Housing should be affordable and accessible to historically marginalized populations, and housing should be well integrated socially and geographically. The right to protection from displacement. We believe that people's homes need to be protected from market forces that cause displacement and changes in government policies over time. The right to land. We believe that the land and housing should be community controlled through democratic structures and processes such as community land trusts and cooperatives. And our principles. The general principles of the community development, the community-centered development. Community wealth building. We believe public resources should not go toward enriching large corporations and rich shareholders, but should instead go toward community wealth building models such as worker-owned co-ops, housing cooperatives, and community-controlled land. The right to build and maintain small businesses. We believe that productive community serving small businesses have the right to be sustained and maintained against corporate change and corporate interest, and the right to good jobs. We believe that everyone who wants a job should be provided a job with a living wage, good benefits, equal pay, and the right to unionization, especially traditional marginalized populations such as the formerly incarcerated. So those are some of the principles that we have developed and are connecting to. Here are some of the kind of terms that you will hear a lot of, and we want to make sure that we offer our understanding and definition. Gentrification. Gentrification is the displacement and replacement of the poor for profit. Gentrification is not a natural or inevitable, but a human-made process. Gentrification is rooted in colonialism and white supremacy. It disrupts family ties, uproots communities, and erases cultural heritage of working class communities and Black and people of color. And here's how we see the gentrification taking place now. Gentrification draws on multiple tactics to defeat resistance: gang injunctions, racist policing that targets poor communities, policing anti-gentrification activities, denying tenants knowledge about their rights, and the cooperation of non-profits, legitimate worker brokered organizations. So those are some of the terms, those are some of the ideas, those are some of the positions that we have developed and are working around. I'm going to ask Damien if he would come in now and then pick up from the development and advancement of the community of the Crenshaw Subway Coalition, and then take us on from here. Damien?
Well, thank you, Akili. And I can again apologize for the technical difficulties. I think collectively we spent 3 hours over the last 12 hours trying to figure this out. And ultimately, we had some challenges in the beginning. I think we are all dealing with these COVID-19 times, and we've got to figure out how we continue to convene. It has been my honor and pleasure to serve as the founder and executive director of the Crenshaw Subway Coalition, to lead in this fight for the community on the Crenshaw Mall, and to discuss several big announcements related to the project. You will get in our meeting, for those that have never physically been to a Crenshaw Subway Coalition meeting, a lot of information. We believe in the intellectual capacity of our community to understand this complex issue. And so pull out your notepads. There's going to be a lot of conversation. We're going to pause twice before we actually get to the full discussion for questions and answers regarding some clarifications. But I'm so happy that everyone's here, and we have a key element in all of this to ground us. Sister Jackie and Brother Akili have been incredible in helping explain the Crenshaw Subway Coalition, the definition of gentrification from, as we understand it, as defined through the Los Angeles Tenants Union, a key partner. But in general, there's this whole American context to gentrification that we have to recognize, right? You gotta recognize that the true OG in all of this is Christopher Columbus. We stand on stolen land. And it has been, as American as apple pie, has been this process of moving people forcibly often and through other means from the place of where they were born. And that most famously was done through the Trail of Tears, among those activities done by this specific organized government, right? As the indigenous people were removed from their land, many died along the way while being moved into places that were considered to be less profitable, right? And you know, there's a key piece that we make known anytime we talk about gentrification. It's that yes, it is a class issue, but there is no class issue in America that's not also a race issue. And so Dr. King made it plain when he gave this tremendous speech, obviously well before, after the March on Washington, but prior to the Poor People's Campaign.
At the very same time that America refused to give the Negro any land, through an act of Congress, our government was giving away millions of acres of land in the West and the Midwest, which meant that it was willing to undergird its white peasants from Europe with an economic floor. But not only did they give the land, they built land-grant colleges with government money to teach them how to farm. Not only that, they provided county agents further their expertise in farming. Not only that, they provided low interest rates in order that they could mechanize their farm. Not only that, today many of these people are receiving millions of dollars in federal subsidies not to farm, and they are the very people telling the black man that he ought to lift himself by his own bootstraps. This is what we are faced with, and this is the reality. Now, when we come to Washington,
he says, when we come to Washington, we're coming to get our check. And there's a history of Black wealth suppression in America for the creation of white wealth creation. Dr. King was talking about the Homestead Acts at the very time that literally the white peasants were coming off the boat from Europe and being given stolen land and given financing and education on how to cultivate that land. They were bombing Black Wall Streets. Historically, Black small businesses have always been locked out of the greater white-led economy. Many of the New Deal benefits that are largely the reason why there exists a strong and stable white middle class. And many of those benefits were not allowed to come down to blacks because Franklin Delano Roosevelt had segregationists within the Senate that he had to contend with. And obviously we all know about redlining, forcing us to live in communities with overvalued property and those racially restricted covenants that prevented us from moving into other communities. After and during the highway expansion, where we began to open up the suburbs from the urban area, we saw a removal of investment in the urban core. And then after that, we saw the Great Society programs, the poverty programs be developed. And Nixon ended that and began a process of mass incarceration. And so today we're seeing predatory lending and flippers. I mean, they've been around the entire way, but there's been this process that's been going on. Take it back to the Emancipation Proclamation of suppressing Black wealth and to a process that allowed the creation of white wealth. And so the result today is what has us at a strategic disadvantage, has us at an economic disadvantage when it comes to these out of control home and rental prices. There's a Black-white wealth gap where the median wealth of a Black family is $4,000 and the median wealth of a white family is $140,000. And we see that most vividly, this discrimination, this discrepancy, this impact on the Black community. We see that most vividly in several ways, and most prominently through the tremendous houseless population. 50% of the houseless families throughout the country are Black, despite the fact that we are only 13% of the population. And locally, 40% of the homeless population is Black, even though we're only 9% of the homeless population. It didn't happen just overnight. Many of the things that are happening that are simply fueling the gentrification now are that mom and pop landlords who might be able to negotiate with you, and many I know are negotiating with those that are having difficulty in these COVID-19 times, have now been replaced by Wall Street landlords who see nothing but the extraction of rents to enrich their global elite. We see the creation of private equity firms, which we're going to start talking about momentarily. And we see the invasion of foreign investors who, again, see this housing as a commodity to make money, not as a place for shelter and to build community. Airbnb has taken many of the housing units off of market, turning people's homes into hotel opportunities, despite the fact that we have plenty of unionized hotels in the city that should be getting that business instead. And the flippers knocking on grandmama's door, paying her bottom dollar or less than the home's worth, and then putting it back on the market at a ridiculous price. And then an issue that we've been intentional about lifting up in the Crenshaw Subway Coalition, we see upzoning and the speculative real estate market leading to overvaluing land, so that it makes it nearly impossible for affordable housing to be built, and often to see grants and favors being given to developers who simply use that ability to build more to sell the land for a greater value. And so let's move now to the Crenshaw Mall. And it's really important that we recognize what the mall plan as proposed by Capri, Mr. Quentin Primo out of Chicago, was and was not. And it's important that we and we'll get into it in the latter part of the meeting, recognize who really owned the mall, who really financed the mall, who really is selling the mall, and who was really behind trying to own the mall. But first, let's focus in on the Crenshaw Mall development that was approved by the City Council in 2018. We like to say it was not so much a mall redevelopment as a housing project. This was the image that was frequently used of a center at the intersection of Stocker and Crenshaw to bring in lots of additional retail. But really, the key focus, and that was a requirement, was the hotel in the back end and the housing. Nearly over 961 units of luxury housing, 90% of them market rate. Market rate's a term that we use in the Crenshaw Subway Coalition, where we ask people to do a call and response, and we ask them, what does market rate mean? And they say, not for us. Market rate in the city of Los Angeles is identified. The city of Los Angeles identified that you need a household income of $120,000 a year to afford a market rate apartment. A market rate apartment or home. And so in a community like Crenshaw, where development comes and is proposed that seeks to have 90% of the units be only for families making over $120,000, that's not a plan for us, that's a plan to displace us. And so we understand these terms. Again, we want to make sure everybody is dealing with the same vocabulary. Housing for affordability for a family, for a individual, is defined as spending no more than 30% of your income on housing costs. So if you're a homeowner, it's your mortgage, your insurance, your basic utilities. If you're a renter, it's your rent and your utilities. So that's housing affordability. That's different than affordable housing. Affordable housing is a number that is based on a countywide median income, which determines what level of people, what income level folk would be at to qualify for deed restricted housing. So there's housing for those who are low income, and they are specifically restricted to those who are low income. And the process of determining who can qualify for those restricted units is based on countywide area, what's a countywide number known as the area median income. So take Palos Verdes, Bel Air, South Central, Inglewood, the Valley, Victorville, and you come up with, not Victorville, but Lancaster, that's within LA County, and you come up with an area median income of LA County that is $73,100. Now, housing cost is so high in Los Angeles that the federal government even gives you a bump to assume that our housing costs are great. But look at the numbers and look at the data that's specifically in red. To qualify for affordable housing, you can make up to, as a family of four, $83,500. And much of the affordable housing that's being built is being built in that level between $52,200 and $83,500, in that low income level. And why is that a problem for our community? We're not anything like that. We're nowhere near that number. The numbers in our community, in this Crenshaw area, in our zip codes, are almost half, in some cases less than half, of what that top number is. So we want to make sure people understand that when we talk about affordable housing, we're talking about housing that people in this community can afford. And we're actually backing off the term because we understand how it's being used and misused, and the perception and the difficult conversation about what is done and what was done with respect to public housing kind of stops people. The question is, do you want housing in the community that the people who currently live in the community can afford? And that's not area median income. That's not necessarily known as even affordable housing. That's actually neighborhood median income housing, which we'll get to. The other misconception we want to address is this idea, this belief that affordable housing is slum-like. It's not. Much of the most beautiful housing that's being built in America is affordable housing. Here's an affordable housing project in San Francisco. It's actually for the formerly houseless. Here's an affordable housing project that you can drive by today, safely, distance, with your windows rolled up, of course. But here in Santa Monica, you can build beautiful affordable housing, and we don't have to sacrifice design excellence for housing affordability. And so we've got to talk about this dynamic. And this is going to be critically important, especially when we get to the part of the agenda where we talk about what our real big vision and plan is. There is the tale of two Crenshaws. We do have the richest Black community in the United States, although clearly not as rich as the richest white community in the United States. We do have the richest community, Black community in the United States, but we also have a very working class community that surrounds it, and a very economically stressed low-income community at the base of that hill. And it's important to recognize that this is not unique to Crenshaw. This is an American phenomenon we're the only race within America that lives together across lines. It is a beauty because we're able to all come together, but it's also a challenge. And so within a 2-mile radius of the Crenshaw line, and actually within the Crenshaw Mall census tract, or directly adjacent, you do see that rich Black community, or affluent, middle-class, stable middle-class Black community, and then you see that economic stress. In the very census tract that the Crenshaw Mall is in, the median household income for a family of four is less than $22,000 a year. Let me say that again. Half of the people that live in the census tract that is in the mall, half of them make less than $22,000 a year. The middle number between that 5,800 people The middle number is $22,000 a year. That's difficulty. That's economic uncertainty. That's economic stress. And those are the people that need to be put first when we begin to think about anything as it relates to the Crenshaw line. They're not comfortable. We need to make them comfortable and embrace them as a community and make sure the developments that we advocate for or against have them in mind. But then there's also this myth. There's this myth that that the people who are the homeowners that live around Crenshaw are stable. Actually, over half of the Black homeowners and almost 2/3 of the brown homeowners spend over 30% of their income on housing. And these are pro-COVID-19 numbers. And we find that that over 30% of Black homeowners and nearly 1/3 of brown homeowners spend over 50% of their income on housing, right? These are the folk who are most in danger of losing their homes in this COVID-19 crisis. And there are a lot of them. Among the renters, look at these numbers. Over 70% of the Black and over 2/3 of the brown renters in our community spend over 30% of their income in housing. And nearly half of the Black and 39% of the brown renters in our community spend over 50% of the income on housing. We have a lot of housing insecurity within our community, a lot of distress that this COVID-19 crisis has only exacerbated. And I want to just run through these. These are just stats that show you how the crisis has gotten worse. We're recording this. We will make this data available. But you can see with the darkening from 2011 to 2016 that the crisis has only gotten worse. And then you can see how we're getting priced out, how the home value prices are drastically increasing. And I'm going to say this to our homeowners that may be doubting when we say that housing in our community needs to be affordable. A lot of y'all got your homes at what would be affordable today, at that rate that what would be affordable today. I know a specific individual whose name I won't call out, who proudly says that he bought his house in Leimert Park for $225,000 in 2004. That house is now worth over $800,000. And the challenge for us, for those who are homeowners, is to recognize that those of us who advocate for housing that is affordable and affordable housing, is that we simply want that same opportunity that homeowner in 2004 was provided to be provided to those who are not homeowners today. We want to make sure those who are economically distressed are able to live and enjoy the fruits of this additional investment through transit and through new businesses, that they're still here to stay. Better neighborhoods, same neighbors. Here's another data that just shows that the cost burden is most intense and among the renters who are low income, and that even those who are extremely cost burdened, right, are in many of the census tracts that surround our community. We have a lot of housing insecurity, and again, these are numbers pre-COVID-19. But we have a model with respect to this gentrification crisis. We study this issue at the Crenshaw Subway Coalition every day. And I can firmly say that the only Black community in all of America that is undergoing intense gentrification, and a city that is undergoing intense gentrification, can be found in East New York. And part of that, a large part of that, has to do with its able assembly member and city council member, Charles and Inez Barron. Here's Charles Barron talking about gentrification.
And ensuring that the gentrification does not hurt those people who've been living.
And that's the shame. You know, that's the problem we have. My analysis, Sam, I'll divorce you from this. I think that we're suffering from a form of neo-colonialism. The new way to colonize a people is to put Black faces in high places. Call them president, call them governor, call them mayor. But you know what, Sam? Keep the policies the same. But put a Black face on it so we can't say it's racism. No, it's not racism. The president's Black. It's not racism. The mayor's Black. It's not racism. The governor's Black. It's not racism. Most of the city council members are Black and Latino. It's neo-colonialism. The new way to colonize our people is to put Black faces in high places. You know why I call this a colony? You know what a colony is, Sam. It's when people outside of your neighborhood controls everything. You know who owns the land in East New York? Not East New Yorkers. East New York is 70% Black, 20% Latino, 10% other, and that other's not even all white. There's Bangladesh and all of that stuff. We don't own no land, somebody else does. We don't own all the businesses, somebody else does.
How do you change that?
We're fighting on that right now. You get in there, you organize, you start things to take control over your neighborhood. You start with changing the political structure from the sellout, I'll be nice, the sellout brothers and sisters that get in these places and do us wrong, Sam. You got to get radicals. That's why I'm proud to be radical. I'm proud to be revolutionary. I'm proud to be Black. I'm proud to say I'm a Black nationalist. I'm proud to say I'm not an ex-Black Panther. I am still a Black Panther to my heart. We got to stop being afraid to be Black, strong, radical, and not get in there and say, let me learn how to play the game. Let me get over.
But many members of the, forgive me for putting it this way, of the Black elite, the Black elite economically and educationally, they say that being radical is not the way to achieve what needs to be achieved.
They have to say that so they can stay in position, so they can have the whites and the Democratic Party continue to kick stuff to them being radical. Look what radical politics did to East New York. Give me one of your neoliberal, neoconservative, sellout people. Give me one of them and tell them to match their community with my community. Tell them to come out, take you around some of these people who said that to you, go around their community, then come around my beloved East New York and see what Black radical politics did to East New York. My wife is a Black radical politician, elected officials. She is in the city council where I was. I am in her state assembly seat. Joy Simmons is a Black radical. She's the female leader. We have 18 Mitchell. He's a radical Black. He's the head of the community board there. We got rid of the local Democratic Party sellout brothers and sisters, and I'll be nice for you, Sam. We got rid of them, and we control that now. Look at East New York now and compare my East New York, me, Black radical, in your face, to those who are in other communities that you think have the right method of going along to get along, be cool, because that Black radical thing is a thing of the 60s. Look at their neighborhood and look at mine.
Charles Barron, ladies and gentlemen, what's the result? In hyper-gentrifying New York City, East New York is the only part, while numbers in Harlem have significantly declined and the majority of Brooklyn has declined, in East New York, they have seen a 13% increase in the Black population and a 6% decrease in the white population. He's done it while building 6,000 new affordable housing units by having a clear and unapologetic statement, which we have come from, or we have developed at the Crenshaw Subway Coalition, which is, if our people can't afford it, don't build it. He makes the developers come in and not just build affordable housing, but build housing that's affordable to his community. And he talked in that clip about, yes, holding the line as a politician, which is critically important, but also holding the line as a community, making sure that the institutions, the structures, those influencers that all of our politicians like to put their names on when they send out their mailers, making sure all of them were in a line. With that unity, with that alignment, with that collective community power, we can see similar results. We can see similar results. And so the Crenshaw Subway Coalition, largely because we saw that projects like the Crenshaw Mall have been done in other low-income communities as economically distressed and with housing insecurity as ours, lead to a price out and push out, we filed a lawsuit in state court. It challenged the project on Fair Housing Act and Fair Housing and Employment Act laws. That law, as many people know, was a product of, that was passed immediately after Dr. King's slaying. Literally, it was written with the blood of Dr. King. And it says, that lawsuit, that by having the units priced at a level unaffordable to the surrounding Black and brown community, we were being priced out of being able to be in it. And it said by having a project that would lead to a wave of gentrification around it, including those low-income communities that immediately surround it, it would push out Black and brown community residents. And that is a violation of the Fair Housing Act. The suit is currently to be heard in in state court in November 2020, but given the way that the courts are backing up now, that's very unlikely. And that number that we were talking about, just so we have an idea of the scale of the push out that would happen, we identified there were nearly 70,000 residents within a 2-mile corridor that were at a moderate risk of displacement if this mega project came online. We identified that there were 65,000 of them were at a higher risk of displacement, meaning that they were among that group of people that were spending over 50% of their income in rent and would likely be displaced by having the increased rents occur around the project. And we found that there were even 40,000 that fit that description. They were renters. They were already spending over 50% of their income in rent, and they were in close proximity to a transit line. We now know and can quite clearly say that those that are within a half mile of a transit line are at greater risk of displacement than those that are a little bit further away. And so that was the basis of our lawsuit. That's a lot of data. And so Akili, I'm gonna have you come back online and lead us into our first Q&A session. But I think you first got a commercial.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for that. I know it was a lot of information for people, and I know going through this in a virtual way sometimes is not as easy as if we were in the same room together. So, excuse me. So I want to make sure that people got that information. But one of the things that we believe in, that we have to go to the people in our community. We have to call on the people in our community. We have to come to you and go to you and say, it is up to you to help keep us going. Because the more you invest, the more we can do. The more we can do, the more that we can protect our community. So if you see your screen right now, and I know you're thinking, what is this? Well, you can help sustain the Crenshaw Subway Coalition, the Umoja Center, and what we are doing by going online right now, going to www.crenshaw.org and donate. It's one way that we can make sure that we continue to stay on the front lines, but we want to do it with your support. We don't want to always have to get grants. We don't always want to have to go out and get other people to do this. We want you to be the major investors in our advancement. So go right now to www.crenshawsubway.org and donate. We're gonna, and I know I've seen some of the questions in the Q&A about the data. I know we want to go back, and I know some people have had some questions about would you go back to a certain spot? Because we are losing time, we're not losing time, because we are a little behind, we are going to have to do a little condensing to try to catch up and make sure that we stay on time. So I want to try to answer people's questions. I see we got 9 people who have raised their hands. And so we want to try to get to some of those questions, and we want to try to respond. We're going to reduce our discussion right now because we got more discussion coming on later on in the program. So let me see if I can get some of the Q&As. Could you recap, Damien, some of the a question around recapping some of the negotiations points, if you could do that.
I'm sorry?
What were we negotiating with, and why did we did the suit? How did we let the Crenshaw Mall slip from under us, and further gentrification? Please share the background on the project. So a lot of these are some technical ones. Let's move, if you can't get feedback, and if you, okay. Happy to see, okay. So can you recap the negotiation points? How do we ensure our cultural identity is remained? Recap the negotiation points and the suit, and then the discussion about cultural, how do we remain culturally in our communities? Recap, if you would, Damien.
Yeah, of course. I think one of the key points is that people have to begin from a place of strength. And unfortunately, largely because there's an absence of some understanding of these issues, and there had been an absence of political support behind making the project what it was, we filed our lawsuit. And we began from the standpoint of what we know will happen to our community, given what will happen to others when 90% affordable, 90% market rate projects are done. And anyone that calls this an affordable housing project is intentionally misinforming you. A project that is 90% market rate and is where 90% of the units being built are for people to make over 100, or for families to make over $120,000 a year is not an affordable housing project. This was not an affordable housing project. And you know, I've said this in other meetings. It would have been interesting to see if it actually was, if it was maybe 1090 as opposed to 10% market rate, 90% affordable. We probably would have been embracers of the project and wanted to work on other terms. But that wasn't what was proposed. What was proposed was a luxury project development, luxury housing project development in a community that was going to displace 70,000, potentially displace 70,000 residents in our community. And we will not back away from fighting on that front.
There's another question about how to address the issue of economic impact post-COVID-19 in our community.
Yeah, I mean, I think the key point as it relates specifically to this is that each of these numbers that we talk about with respect to people that were spending a percentage of their income in housing before COVID-19, they've all gotten much worse. And I know we talked about this in other calls, but this crisis is not going to go away anytime soon. The new normal will be having, you know, a significant percentage of Black renters and even many low-income homeowners completely unable to pay their rents, been completely unable to pay their mortgages. And so that's one of the reasons why the Crenshaw Subway Coalition, along with many other allies throughout Los Angeles, we're part of this huge coalition called Healthy Los Angeles. We're also advocating at the state level and advocating at the federal level for those for the protections that are necessary to keep people in these homes in this COVID-19 times, but also keep people in these homes, given that we know that the economic crisis from COVID-19 is going to last long past the lifting of the safer at home ordinances.
And one last question, and then we should move on. How do we ensure that our cultural identity remains?
Indeed, got to fight. We ensure it, self-determination, right? Going to be hard to maintain your cultural identity if all the Black people, going to be hard to maintain cultural identity in Crenshaw if all the Black people have been pushed out to Victorville and Moreno Valley. Black Lives Matter, Keely, if we allow this gentrification to continue going, is going to have to be known as Black Lives Matter Los Angeles is going to have to be known as Black Lives Matter Moreno Valley, right? We got to take a stand on gentrification, and we've been leading that, and we've had partners within it. And we can do that to maintain our cultural identity, but it begins with space. We're not just trying to create a Disneyland where people just go into Leimert Park Village and go out, and everything around Leimert Park Village is now no longer Black. No, we need to be here. We need to be living here. We need to have our institutions stable, our churches stable, and that's our solution to that challenge.
And there will be more time and space for trying to address people's questions. But I know that there's been a lot of information. And one of the things that we wanted to do was give you a context or provide a context for what is happening now based upon what has been happening. You know, that the sale of the mall just didn't come about. It's been in the making for a long time because of the years of divestment in our community and many of the things that we touched on earlier. So we wanted to try to give a full context of what has been happening, what brings us to where we are today, and what can we do going forward. Next, Damon.
Yeah, and this is key. And I want to get through
really owns them all.
I want to get through these points so that we, especially since we were about 20 minutes behind in starting. So I'm going to ask people to make the calls, see if you can stay with this 20 minutes after, because this is very technical, but it's important as well. And I want to condense it and make it as plain as I can. So the big question is, who really owns them all? Is it the Black man that people have talked about? Well, not really. And who's really selling them all? Is it the Black man? Is he selling it to the CIM Group, which is as bad as you can imagine? Well, not really. So here's the PPs. Quinn Primo operates a company that is a private equity firm known as Capri. And you can find this information out by yourself online. He, like many other firms, that private equity firms throughout the country, are largely funded by pension funds. It is those pension funds which are these massive hundreds of billions of dollars. I think CalPERS is some 120 billion just by itself, which has many of our teachers and state employees within it. hundreds of billions of dollars, trillions across the country are investing in real estate. And Quentin Primo had used those pension funds, the public's dollars, to acquire the Crenshaw Mall. That's a key point. It wasn't like this rich black man picked out his checkbook and started writing numbers and got other rich people to pull out their checkbook. No, they went to pension funds and got them to invest in the purchase of the Crenshaw Mall. Public dollars in the public, technically, those pension funds own the Crenshaw Mall right now. And those public funds have terminated their agreement with Capri. Again, this is information you can find online. The pension funds have found that he's been an inadequate manager of their assets. He's losing them money. And so in the early part of 2019, they began to terminate their relationships, these pension funds in Los Angeles County Employee Retirement Association. They began to terminate their relationships with Capri, and they're quite specific about it. Read it. This is an article. It says the Capri's performance track record for core investments is highly variable. One of the things you need if you're going to be investing pension funds money is that return, so that the workers who fought and have paid into those funds can have a dignified retirement. You see, even in other research, he says he substantially underperformed his goal, right? This is all throughout the press. You just have to know what to look for. And so the pension funds, largely among the dollars that they had within it, moved them to this entity known as DWS, Deutsche Bank, which is managing the assets. It is that entity, DWS, which is managing the asset for the Crenshaw Mall and intends to sell it to CIM Group right now. And so just to back up, Capri bought the mall in 2006 for $136 million using his private equity firm that was backed by public pension funds. He invested even more, $30 million in renovations. And after 10 years, that fund ended. Basically, you have an interim, you have an opening and a closing within these funds. And when it ended, they said, we're not giving you any more money to continue this. And so they sent the mall. The mall has actually been for sale for quite some time now. We became aware that the mall was for sale in the latter part of 2019. And this is the other piece. It's been out to bid before, and other entities before have been in the exact same position as CIM, and they didn't finish the transaction. They did not actually finish the deal. One of them was Hackman Capital Partners in GJM. Hackman's building many of the studios throughout the city of Los Angeles, famously purchased the CBS studios. They initially were a winning bidder. They were in a similar agreement with a contract for purchase, just like CIM, and they backed out. I can tell you the reason they backed out is the quiet secret around the Crenshaw Mall right now. That the plan that Quentin Primo got approved from the city council in 2018 is not what's going to be built. Anyone who would go and build or add retail to a mall in this environment, even pre-COVID-19, is now looking at the opportunity to repurpose that. Primo and Capri, Hackman, and CIM Group, they're not looking to keep the mall operating the same way. And so Hackman backed out of the deal in 2020, and then there was a rapid rebidding to go out to even more entities that they thought could cobble together the money to acquire the property. And so when CIM Group bid, I guess the highest number, we haven't confirmed that, but we assume to be the highest number, they did something extremely unconventional. They announced that they had an intent to purchase, or an agreement to purchase, before they even closed escrow, before the money finally transferred and the authority to control the Crenshaw Mall actually occurred. Very, very weird, completely unprecedented. And so, who is CIM Group? We got Donald Trump and his his son-in-law, Kushner, in our own backyard, y'all. CIM Group is among one of the most elite, what are known as real estate investment trusts in America. They've been operating in plain sight in West Adams. All of that change that you have been seeing down Adams Boulevard as traditional Black and brown businesses were pushed out and replaced with those that are catered to a more affluent crowd. That's them. Loss of Johnny's Pastrami, put it on them. They now own it. Loss of the Cork, put it on them. And they've been clear in all of this. They don't care about the community. They're coming in to repurpose it in their mind. Their business model is specifically this term called re-tenanting. That means kicking the people in the community, in the buildings out, and bringing in more affluent folk. And so Donald Trump and Kushner are extremely tied to him, to the point that they have bailed out Trump. So we've got Trump in our own backyard by this CIM group that is run by some Israelis. And I only say that because they're foreign. They don't care about community impact. They don't care about community blowback, right? And you can see some things. They thrive on getting valuable assets like the Crenshaw Mall at rock bottom prices, and then turning them into something that caters to a higher crowd. So we're saying this, when it comes to this Crenshaw Mall, y'all, this is 1492, and Columbus has approached the shores. What we gonna do? We gonna let this sale go down, or we gonna try and stop it? This is an aggressive, unprincipled, vicious company that has been engaging in the worst of tactics to push out businesses along West Adams, and they intend to do that here. You can see their victims in Oakland and in Venice. And so we got to fight, y'all. We got to fight to the death on this one, because these folk are coming to conquer, and we're not gonna let them. And so let's back up a little bit though. Where's the money coming from for CIM Group? It ain't Donald Trump's money. It's not those affluent business owners' money. They're doing the same thing. They're using pension funds. We got public dollars being used to hurt the public. And that's a fight, that's a battlefield I think we can win. It's something we don't normally do. We typically would fight back and forth with Shaul Kuba, who is the executive of CIM. But we are saying we need to focus in here on where the money is. Like Jesse James said, why did you rob banks? Because that's where the money is. You want to change this project? You want to stop this sale? We got to go where their money is. And so I know that's a lot, but Akili, let's see if there are any key clarifying questions before we go to what should be the bulk of and remainder of our meeting.
One question is, how do you suggest carving out LA for setting low income eligibility from the county? It goes back to a point that you made earlier about neighborhood-based income versus countywide income basis. So how do you suggest carving out our neighborhoods versus taking the whole county?
Well, you can see that what took place specifically in East New York, right? Where basically within that jurisdiction, which is on the border of Brooklyn and Queens, on the border of Queens and Brooklyn, he's been able to say, this is what goes down here. We are exercising our self-determination here. Housing that comes into this community will be affordable to this community. I see no reason why we shouldn't expect the same thing in CD8, Marquise Harris Dawson, CD10, Herb Wesson, and CD9, Curran Price in South LA. But are there any questions related to the pension funds? Because I know that's and who actually owns them all?
Well, one question is we could sell, well, it's not a question, it's really a comment. We could sell these to white people for, we had an African-American developer working on the C8, the Baldwin Hills, who were willing to take over and move on. I'm trying to read this fast.
It's okay.
So we had a African-American developer working on the Baldwin Hills community, who were willing to work with the community, said this person was willing to work with the community. Who is being proposed now to work with the community?
Well, I think here's the key point, right? The mall is no longer in the control of the African-American developer. And he's actually not a developer, he's an asset manager. He's never built a single new building in his life. Not to say that swinging for the fences here, I appreciate that. I believe in black magic, but he'd never actually built anything in his life. And he no longer controls the mall. The mall is now controlled by DWS that is responding to the pension funds directly. So we got to be clear about that. And I think the solution we'll get to momentarily.
And I think we need to move on because we're losing time, but I do want to make sure that Andres Bueno, who has a history of development and working in this area since 1993, 83 rather, has a lot of good points, and I want to try to get to them. There are a lot So let me try to condense those. I'm going to ask us if we could continue to move on, and then I want to come back and try to get to Andreas, try to bring it all together and try to address his points. So if we could move on, and then we'll come back to some more of the questions that people have posed.
So what do we do? What do we do? We got to go back to that first principle, right? That guiding principle, Kuji Chagalia, provided through the Nguzu Saba, created by Dr. Kamalana Karenga, that guiding light of self-determination. How do we change this environment where we are responding to outside forces that don't want to do right by our community, no matter their color, and get back to having some community control? That begins with self-determination. And so our first big announcement for today is for us to do something quite epic, quite legacy-based. And my computer freezes. I love it, right at the moment. You can't make this up. Lord have mercy. It is frozen. Someone does not want this to happen, bros.
Damien, you still on screen share?
Yeah, but
transitioning from community serving to student serving. And this is again right around across the street from USC. And then you have what we call in purple and red, which is completely student serving housing. And so in 1999, we see that it's mostly community serving, either folks who own their houses or renting. And from 1999 to 2009, what we see happen is an almost complete shift where most of the housing is shifted in that community from community serving, as you can see, to housing that's mostly in transitioning from community into student serving housing. And so the majority of that housing in the neighborhood and the community has become completely student serving. And again, this is across the street from USC. And so Rolling Curtis Gardens is in that community. It was 48 units of affordable housing right across the street from the Expo line, a block away from Exposition and Vermont. And if y'all know, it's anybody who lives there, park and just jump on the train across the street literally and be anywhere between the beach and downtown LA or most places in the city in half an hour. And so what we saw is that for this, and if you can see the graphic, you see the USC and then Exposition Park. In 2011, a slumlord named Jeff Green came in and tried to, and bought the property. And Jeff Green, name may be familiar to some folks. He is a billionaire as of 2013, worth $2.3 billion. He is also the new owner of the Dorset Village Apartments on Slauson and 8th. He has bought all of those buildings. And in 2011, he bought this, the Rolling Curtis Gardens complex, known with the understanding that the affordable housing covenants, which protected it to maintain it as affordable housing because it's 100% affordable housing, that was about to expire. And and about a year after purchasing it, he had dropped 90-day notices, actually 60-day eviction notices on all of the residents, which was against the law. I think about a month after after the development, after the housing covenants ended. Tried to evict all of the residents. I should mention again that in a community that is not only flipped from community serving to student serving housing, that the amount of Black residents in that community has dropped drastically, and that this complex at the time was 90% Black. And Black meaning mostly African American, some Central American and continental African folks and Caribbean folks, but overwhelmingly Black. So Jeff Green comes in, tries to move all of the, buys the building up, says that he would commit to the affordable housing covenants. As soon as they expired, tried to get rid of everyone. And through that, there was a 15-month organizing drive, which was a tenant-led campaign to eventually was to block the evictions, but then the long-term goal was to purchase the property. And in 2012, that was able to happen. After 15 months of organizing, a tenant-led campaign that was also included the homeowners and the residents close and renters in a 6-block radius of the complex. The evictions were stopped and the property was purchased. And for us, some of the organizing tactics that were used was building tenant solidarity, having them understand the long-term impact of the loss of that building, culturally relevant engagement, understanding who the residents were and their connections to the community, and also the larger community. And then understanding the legal and state notification requirements and an inside-outside strategy working with city and county public departments and officials. It was also a process that was a community planning process, again, engaging residents and then people who lived around the development to make sure that they shared in a common vision around what that development was going to look like. And then out of that, because this was basically a 3-part organizing effort, which the first one was the actual fight itself to stop the evictions and of all of the low-income residents. And then eventually the building became unaffordable and needed to be redeveloped. And then there was a process to temporarily relocate those folks and then move them back in. And so some of the lessons learned around shifting power that came out of that, we wanted to share with y'all today. One of them being that effective organizing work must be grounded in shared values around stabilizing community and generational instability through land ownership. That you have to start with the context. And for us, it was that Black community displacement is a key piece in this, and that historical, racial, and class perspectives have to be taken into perspective, and that even though that the majority of the folks who lived in the neighborhood were Black and brown homeowners, that the NIMBY or not in my backyard reality was deep and real, and had to engage with all the communities around that. And again, to piggyback off of Damien's point, is that we are the only community, the Black community is the only one that lives together across class lines. We're the only community across the nation that does that consistently. We also had to engage the people and the community, as I mentioned, and understand the diversity that we may all be Black, but we may not all be African American. So we had to be able to speak the language of the people. And then we had to have a collective analysis that produced a more thorough result. And then we had to establish allies, which was important. And understanding that yesterday's enemy could be today's ally, and including advancing an insider-outsider strategy. We had to also identify points of leverage and then plan a strategy using that leverage with both allies and community leaders and residents. And that we had to create protections that were specific and connected to the larger vision to maintain community. So what we know that we had some challenges when it comes to low-income housing. We wanted to maintain the affordability and the low-income status of the building, which was going to be 138 units, and wanted to make sure that the Black residents specifically had a chance to come back and that we didn't contribute to ongoing Black displacement. So there was a negotiated, signed agreement of first right of return with all of the residents there that they all signed, and that was negotiated with the organization and the developers. and we had to be creative. And leadership development also was a critical piece of this, and it had to be ongoing, and again, rooted in community perspective and the knowledge of the issues specific to neighborhoods and communities. And one of the issues that we dealt with was that in the relocation process, because of so much loss of affordable housing, is that just trying to shift those 48 households to different parts of the west side of South Central became an issue, because what we found is that we were losing, as we were going in our redevelopment phase, we had lost so much affordable housing, specifically to Section 8 residents, that what was supposed to have been a 6-month relocation process turned into almost 10 months because of the loss of so much affordable housing. And again, for Black residents who overwhelmingly wanted to stay on the west side of South Central or west of the 110. And we also had to create a vision that the power of the many must be built by the many and not crafted by a few. So that is the story of Roland Curtis Gardens.
And it is from those lessons and bringing together a powerful coalition of people who both have a history, understanding, and capacity that we are moving toward a new vision, a downtown Crenshaw, based upon lessons learned, like from what Malcolm did, based upon the experience of many of the people who are involved, and based upon our need and history for self-determination. So that's where we are moving to now. And Damien's going to come back and explain more about the coalition that we brought together and how we intend to do it. And I want to remind people that my name is Keeley. I'm the director of the Fannie Lou Hamer Institute and an organizer with the Black Lives Matters LA and on the board of BCCLA. You back, Damien?
Yes, I am. And we're going to bring up Paul Yelder for the second major announcement. I think one of the key pieces that we actually have been proposing and talking about is this thing called a community land trust. The reality is that several things are taking place around the area, and we want people in the community to push folk out. We want people in the community to have that level of stability. So Paul is up. What's the second big announcement, Paul Yelder?
Second big announcement is that we are, as part of this reclamation of downtown Crenshaw, we're going to establish a fund to acquire buildings and place them into a community land trust. Now, my background is in developing community land trusts. I worked in Dudley Street Neighborhood Initiative back 35 years ago in Boston. And similar to what happened in East New York, the people of Dudley Street decided to do something about the impending wave of gentrification that was coming. Our response was to take a stand and own the land. And we literally acquired all the vacant land in our neighborhood and placed it in a community land trust. On that land trust, we had built over 200 units of housing that was affordable to our people. We also had space within that land trust for community centers, and now we have a greenhouse as well there. But here in Crenshaw Town Center, downtown Crenshaw, we, as part of our redevelopment efforts, we're going to fund our land trust. We've just launched a new land trust, Liberty Community Land Trust, that will be implementing long-term plans for maintaining affordable housing, developing and maintaining affordable housing for our people.
Thank you, Paul. That's a big piece too. How do we make sure that people in the community can continue to benefit from the project? Obviously, we're dealing with this even as the Crenshaw line, a line we fought for, is part of a process to push folk out. So being able to take land off the speculative real estate market, as you ably did in Boston, is critically important. We have other practitioners showing us once more. We've done this before, we can do it again. Nikki, are you there?
Hi, I am here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Sorry, I'm joining as a participant a little bit late here, but I just wanted to give, I think, a couple other examples of where tools like this have come into good practice. Right now in the city of Los Angeles, we have Inclusive Action, which is formerly known as Learn, and they're in the process of acquiring several commercial buildings in the East LA area in order to do the same thing, right, to maintain local ownership and especially for locally owned businesses. We have some really great examples of this happening down in Jackson, Mississippi with Jackson Rising and Cooperative Jackson.
Yep.
They've acquired a huge amount of land and they have some good work happening there. I mean, I think the other part that I wanted to maybe add to the conversation briefly that we had not touched on yet, though, is what a difference this type of local ownership is going to make to small business owners. So I was a business owner in Hawthorne and in Compton running a tire recycling plant where we had like 24 formerly incarcerated men doing basically green collar work, right? We're manufacturing products out of used tires. And we were in business for, 6 to 8 years, really. But what ended up putting us out of business, among many other things, though, was really the cost of the rent. And I will say that this happens again and again and again to businesses in our community, right? No matter how much we go out and work to build up those small businesses, which is so hard to do when you're undercapitalized to begin with, right, as a community. And then when real estate, like predatory real estate owners come in, they're swapping ownership between themselves and their cronies and folks just like them constantly, and they're out to extract the most wealth possible from every piece of land that they own. It makes it impossible for businesses to sustain themselves long term. And the only reason that we have the local businesses that we've had in the community thus far is because the value of the property was so low. And as it continues to rise, we're only going to continue to be decimated. And so what we're working towards here to keep this ownership local and keep the ownership non-predatory is going to make all of the difference for us to have a long-term and sustainable community here. And I have a presentation with a lot of other links to examples of the work being done elsewhere in the country that I'd be happy to share around for anybody who's interested in hearing about more examples of it. A great way to learn about it historically is to read the book Collective Courage, which is a collection of case studies from the African American community pooling resources to create cooperatively owned land, schools, businesses, and communities since time immemorial. So that's what I have to add here today. Thanks you guys for all the work that you're doing.
Thank you,
Thank
Nick.
you, Nikki. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just saying that was more inspiration. Again, the key point here is we've done this before. We can do it again. Now, we wanted to provide like 40 good minutes of deep questions. We know there are a lot of them. So a few things for those who are on the phone, you've got to hit. You've got to hit *9 to raise your hand to get in the stack of people to speak. And then when you're chosen, and we'll read you by the number, your last 4 digits. When you're chosen to speak, just press *6. But we might have a few questions already with respect to the Q&A. So let's bring the panel back up, and we've got many of the partners that we have at the table. You know, this is not just crazy old Damien. Oh, he's got another crazy idea. No, this is not just Crenshaw Subway Coalition. We're not even formally as part of this. We're acting as individuals, but as individuals in the capacity to bring together a bunch of other key practitioners and community partners like Vermont Slauson. Vermont Slauson EDC, as you know, is operated by Joe Roseanne. It's a CDFI, which means that they're able to administer funds and loans, and they'll be our partner with respect to the stabilization fund that Paul talked about. And we want to be able to make sure that that analysis, because everyone has come together rapidly, and we are enthused by the people at the table, again, over 200 years of community development experience who have responded to the call to reclaim this space, reimagine it for us, and to see what community wealth building really look like. And so we're going to move forward with those partners. The financing is not the problem, although I see some questions. They say, reach out to some actors and celebrities. We'll take that too. But the financing is not going to be our challenge. The challenge will be for us to be able to stop this sale, which requires you, the community, putting that pressure on the elected officials, and us being able to persuade our partners to make this an important priority and then allowing us the space to engage. This is quite radical, right? Normally a project is proposed to the community and we are simply responding to it. Here we're trying to engage in some community center planning with the community at the table. But let's, because we started late, let's at least use the next 30 minutes of Keely to start going through some of these questions. So if you're on the phone and you've got a question, press *9 to raise your hand. But if you're in the Zoom right now, you can raise your hand as well. Where is raise your hand on this thing? I can't see it because I've got the host.
For the participants, it'll be at the bottom middle of your screen.
Yeah, bottom middle of your screen. Raise your hand to get in the queue. So I see we've got Chimbuku, and after Chimbuku, we've got Linda on tap.
And Damien, one of the questions that was raised in the Q&A was what can labor unions do to be a part of this?
I mean, and that's why I think we have hope. Many of our labor partners have spent a lot of time and resources making sure that those pension funds were reflective of their boards, and were using their resources in a manner that's reflective of boards. And I can say unequivocally, for those pension funds that we've identified, and we've identified them all, that are involved in the sale, all of them are being shocked, and all of them want to work with the community on a solution. And so I think we can expect that level of support, and we can continuing that. But if you're a union member and your dues are going into this, with Sarah, your voice is going to be critically important. And I think all of us as a community, we're matching those funds with our public dollars. So we all have a role. But Chimbuku, we've got a question. You've got a comment or question, sister.
Asante, Damien. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Actually, Akili had asked the question. My name is Chimbuku Tambo, co-vice chair and co-associate director of the African American Cultural Center, co-vice chair along with Jackie of BCCLA. My question had to do with the role of the city council, and particularly the Black city council members, and how do we pressure them to support the right thing on this case. But Akili had actually raised the question, but I still would like to address it to you. And then I have to step away, so I may have missed this, but can you talk a little bit more about who these partners are, these wonderful people are that you're pulling together?
Well, we've got some of them on the line right now. Dolores Brown is here to answer some questions. Dolores, I don't know if you want to speak to more of who these partners are, but she is, we had a space on the agenda to talk about Market Creek Plaza. Again, a place where Black and brown people have done this before and can do it again. Dolores, do you want to talk a little bit about some of our partners?
Great, thank you so much. I know that this is a lot of information to absorb, and I wanted to really give credence and time for people to really understand the concept. And so we have very quickly engaged probably all of our community organizations, from the development side of the ledger to our faith-based community. We are in that process of engaging them, as well as in our financing community. One of the key components when we look at just talking about, I know that there's a major question is, how do we amass the dollars to quickly? One of the clear things of this project is that this project sits in what is classified as an opportunity zone or area. And so my background is I am a community developer and a community banker for probably about the last 40 years. And I have been engaged with community development financial institutions for the last 21 years. The Market Creek project was my project, and the vision of being able to know how communities can quickly and collectively come together in a visioning process, develop a phenomenal project that has, at the end of the day, community wealth building and community legacy and ownership for all participants in that project, in that process. And so I think that we are still in the process of immersing all of our names, but I think that at our next conversation, we'll be able to fully and actively supply the list of the names of all of the organizations that have come together. We're strategically meeting, daily, hourly, nightly, to focus on strategy moving forward and creating the critical paths to be able to have all of the components that the visioning process of re-envisioning downtown Crenshaw is going to need. And so that is really our focus at this point, of really spending the deep dive conversations and bring the players to the table that can create the implementation process. That is so crucial as we are moving forward.
And I think she's very humble, but Dolores Brown is a giant within the community development world. Has over 37 years experience doing this, bringing people to the table. And what I think we want people to know is that the experts that are already in our community, the key practitioners, have been at the table to identify how we acquire the asset. But then the conversation then goes to this visioning process where we actually engage with you, looking at some of the good things that was in the Primo plan. Nobody's saying that there weren't anything good, but then giving you the opportunity to talk about that, giving you the opportunity to talk about what true community ownership looks like. Linda, you're up. And Linda, you're up on tap, or on deck. We've got Andre. Linda, go ahead.
My question is, do you have any investment models that you are able to share at this point for the Liberty Trust?
Right. I think is the question that you're asking that, are you looking for an investment opportunity within the trust?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. And so that's where the role that Vermont Slauson EDC comes in as a CDFI partner. They are a credible, 27-year institution that has been able to allow people to responsibly invest their money for a specific purpose. So we are working with Vermont Slauson to capitalize, that is to raise money for that fund. As we're out there raising money for acquisition, we are raising money for that. And in all of this, we're both looking at those that have the big checkbooks and those that have the small checkbooks. That was one of the most tremendous things about Market Creek Plaza. Yes, it brought together the foundations and the institutional investments, including, I believe, pension funds, Dolores. But it also allowed people in the community of modest means to buy shares and to have true community ownership, which no one ever talks about around here. So we're putting together those models with our partner at Vermont Slauson, because it sounds like you want to invest, sister.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Linda. Andre, you're up next. And Andre, after Andre, we've got a phone number that ends in 5441. You're on deck.
All right, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. My name is Andre Bueno. I'm a former investment banker, community developer. My grandma started the business. Mom took it to America. My mom used to live in the Crenshaw district back in '83. Seeing how just this entire process has been kind of playing out, just been ridiculous. My dad was an electrician over at Men's Central Jail, and his pension fund money, he actually left it with Lacera. So he made me this bet where half the money came to me, the other half he left with Lacera. And it's interesting how just grossly mismanaged it was, and how just, yeah, anyways. So what I'm proposing is really along lines of what like you guys are talking about. I have a different mechanism. It just seems a lot more practical in terms of like unlocking like wealth for our community, which would be using a crowdfunding model, in which for every $50 million we're able to essentially create like an initial public offering. A good model to look after would be like Fundrise. And what you do is for every 50 million bucks, we're able to unlock money right for our community, so we can create smaller development projects and really create, let's call it like a destination Crenshaw village that ties in with, you know, the work that Kaiser Permanente is doing next door, with the work that we know our community needs, with, you know, everything that we're doing in terms of activating art right down to Lemert. So to be able to like tie all these things in together and also take advantage of Destination Crenshaw, I think if we can all be able to rally together and really think about like how to get the most amount of attention to this, and that's where you know, the idea came in. It's like what would NIP do? And it's like NIP would try to bring like everyone in the community together. NIP would probably want you know, obviously the mall to stay for the community. And then really kind of thinking about unique ways of like, you know, Nipple's like a genius at like monetizing everything. And I'd like to, you know, take a stab at what I think, you know, I gathered from that, kind of watching him growing up and all that. Yeah, so that's what I'd like to be able to help out with.
Thank you so much for that, Andre. It sounds like you are a member of the community that has similarly lots of access to and expertise to assist us in this. This is for everyone. Go to www.downtowncrenshaw.com. That's currently a sign-up form. Sign up and show your support. Give us your comments. Let us know what your expertise is so that you can be part of this community conversation. Next up, we've got the phone number ending in 5441. And then we have Buy Back the Block LA. You're on deck.
My name is Molly Bell, and I'm calling straight out of Compton. And I just want to say hello to everyone. This has just been outstanding. Damien, I appreciate the way that it started. I just have one quick question, but I just have to give up this. I am one who have a foot in the African American world that I love, and all those who know me, I am an activist. But today, you presented a program by bringing up Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King and about the check coming that was uncashed. And you presented this message to us in a term that everybody can understand. And Malcolm, I appreciated that you showed us we made mistakes. Here's what we learned from them. That is awesome. Most people don't do it. You didn't call anybody names. You didn't make anybody feel unwelcome. I believe that this today, and it's right before Mother's Day, and all of you on the phone, all of you in this organization that started this, you are like the mothers of the community. You're raising us, you're teaching us, you are informing us. My question is, when I hang up this phone, when I get ready for church tomorrow, and please include the church world. A lot of them paid off their mortgages. A lot of them got some money. A lot of them can influence people, and that's what we need, because the first step that Dr. Karinga teaches us is unity, and we have to become unity. Here's my question. What are our marching orders when we hang up? What do we do? Jackie, I know we'll hear it in Achilles and to BCCLA, so that is just great. I close by saying, all you prayer warriors out there, you know what you've got to do. You've got to keep fasting. You've got to keep praying, because the struggle continues, but always to God be the glory. Thank you, group.
Thank you, Molly Bella. Keely, you know,
some of us we knew how you were going to end that, Molly Bell. But I think there's really two things. One is we have to resist the oppose and resist. So the first thing is the resistance. The second thing, though, is we got to embrace the vision and the notion of our community taking over that mall. We have the resources, we have the capacity, we have the intellect to do it. But first, we got to stop the sale. So part of what we are going to have to do is communicate with our elected officials. We were on Thursday, many of us testified before the pension fund board to begin raising up our opposition to the sale. So the first thing is we got to stop the sale. The second thing is we have to embrace the vision. And the vision is one that we've shared many times among ourselves. What if we could? Well, now we can. And we can make downtown Crenshaw into what we said we wanted it. We've all talked about, we've all made reference to, we've all believed one day would happen, can now happen. Resist, embrace.
And I think we've got next up, all of that, Akili, and then some. And I think next we have Buy Back the Block LA, which is one of those resistance embracements efforts that is taking place within our community. More specifically, for people who are listening in right now, website is www.downtowncrenshaw.com. Sign up immediately. Let us get activated. Let's get it organized so that we can stop that sale and bring our community together to make this project reality. Buy Back the Block LA. You're on.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hey, so this is Danny Carter checking in. I'm one of the co-founders of Buy Back the Block LA, and I just want to start off by saying thank you to all of you guys on the call. You know, the type of movements that you guys have started help to inspire what we do, and we started our group after Nipsey passed last year, and you know, I want to tell everybody who's on the call, yeah, I know that we need a lot of money to get this mall. But I want you to know that it's 100% possible, because when we started our group, we did it to continue to run with that torch that Nipsey was running with. And in just a short amount of time, you know, we had a fundraise amongst ourselves, and we were able to raise $51,000 between a bunch of people from our community with moderate incomes, with modest incomes. And we came together as a group and we practiced group economics. And as a result, we were able to go out of state, purchase a property, rehab that property, and it's going to be on the market a week from yesterday. So that was something that we were able to do by coming together. You know, as Black people, we have no shot out here if we're going to try to do things on our own. If you don't believe it, just look around you. The walls are closing in on you from every side. There are groups in other communities closing in and encroaching in on your space every moment of every day. So now is the time that you have to decide. When you look at the Black person next to you, you have to understand that Black person is your best shot at survival, point blank, period. So I just want to end it by saying thank you guys so much. And I know the sister before asked for our marching orders, but I'm going to double down on that and ask that you make it more specific. Because if we say, hey, we got to put pressure on our elected officials, we don't know what that means. You know, we're following your tempo and your lead. We need you to break down for us, okay, we need you to put in X amount of calls to so-and-so's office every day this week for the next 2 weeks. We need specifics so then that way we can take those marching orders and put them to work. So again, thank you guys so much, and really looking forward to being a part of this program to purchase this mall back.
We appreciate you, brother. I saw Dolores nodding her head. Do you have anything more? Can we be more specific, Sister Dolores?
I definitely think I just wanted to reiterate the cost of being able to participate with this. In the Market Creek project, we began with actually setting up a layaway plan for our community at large, with the focus of being able to save $100 increments up into what we thought that the value of the share was going to be. So I think that what you will find is that you have thought leaders that will definitely take the deep dive and looking at what is the amount that the community can afford. We'll build the model around investment infusion based upon what our community can afford, and then we'll go out to our financial community and raise our gap dollars to make the project happen. So I just really want to focus on and really reiterate that if we have the vision, there are financing models to make it happen. And we just have to believe that we can do this.
And thank you for the specificity, the quest for specificity. I think that's absolutely necessary. I think one of the things that we need to do, you know, starting Monday is, and you can go to our website and we'll post this up, but start calling our local elected officials now, CD8 and CD10. Don't sell the mall. That's all you have, you know, and we can get to the numbers. Don't sell the mall. Don't let the mall be sold. That's the first thing. And it's an easy thing because they need to hear from us. And I appreciate the fact that you raised that question. I appreciate the fact that we have to be much more detailed and specific in what we are asking. And so stay on the line and we will come up with the phone numbers and the rest. So that by the time this is over, we want to demonstrate a groundswell. We've got 300 and some people on the line. If 30 of you, 10% of you called your elected official Monday, you know, either CD8 or CD10 and said, stop the mall from being sold, that would be a groundswell.
And CD8, we know CD8 and CD10. CD8, because the mall is actually in both. CD10 is the mall to the north of King, and CD8 is the mall south of King. CD8 is Councilmember Marquis Harris Dawson. CD10 is Council President Emeritus Herb Wesson Jr. So we've got this, we don't have a number next to it, but it's call-in user 5. We're going to allow you to talk. So if you see that you just heard, you're allowed to ask your question. And then we've got T on deck.
Right. Hi, this is Asada with Hyde Park Organizational Partnership for Empowerment. And one of the things I was concerned about as we were talking in terms of...
Uh-oh. Where'd you go? Oh, no. Well, let's see if we can't pull her back up. While we're pulling her back up, T, you're on.
Hello?
Yes, please. Welcome.
Yeah. Good day. Thank you so much for y'all putting this together. It's amazing information. I just had a quick question, sir, because I know there's a lot of people on here and a lot of questions. Could you briefly explain the public pension fund? How is this money actually collected, allocated? Who controls it? And how is it that the CIM Group, Trump's group, is able to utilize these funds when they're public pension funds? If I'm understanding correctly.
Yeah, I mean, and that's one of the key pieces. So, public pension funds are among the largest investment entities in the planet, right? With the responsibility of returning or generating enough revenue to take care of retirees. And so, whether it's Lacera, whether it's UC Regents as it pertains to UC employees, they each have a pension fund board. In the case of UC Regents, it's the Board of Regents appointed by the governor. And they each have a board which has a fiscal responsibility of investing those dollars and generating a return to pay out the pensions of the retirees. And I will say, and this is one of the reasons why, we, Keely, myself, Malcolm, and many of the other organizers have put our head around it. We are salivating for a fight to talk about how this gentrifying group, CIM Group, is able to misuse public pension fund dollars, mostly undercover, and not see them done for community purpose, and
right.
Dollars being used in a better way. There's an entire movement that's been going on out there. That I think this fight, this campaign, especially since we're going to win, that will lift up, which is this effort to get our pension funds to invest in a more community-serving, environmentally friendly, pro-worker environment. It's been going on for quite some time, and that's why many of our labor partners have been putting people and putting campaigns together to get good people on their board, and it's what gives us hope. And so I think, if you're a union member or a retiree, let this conversation begin within your community. Let's advance the dialogue, and ultimately, I think, if we were dealing with Trump being the investor here, we'd have difficulty. But I think we're dealing with our friends in the labor community who, when brought to this attention, will act.
Thank you so much.
Indeed. Let's see if this is you, Asada. If you can, raise your hand again so we can bring you back. But right now we've got a number that ends in 4541, and then on deck we've got O. So 4541, you're on.
I don't know. Don't say anything.
Nope. You got a question or comment?
They might be asking. Say hello.
Hello. Hey. Welcome.
Yes. Hello?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know I was on the line. I just want to say I think it's beautiful what you guys are doing right now. This is Sister Khadijah, Lady Sunshine. I just wanted to say that this is well overdue, and I appreciate the things that you guys have done thus far. It's just so wonderful. It gives us a ray of hope. I think that the Black community has been under stress for a long time with all the brutality and violence and everything going on, and it's just been a situation where we need to go up to the bat, to the baseball bat and hit a home run. We need something. We've been depressed for a long time, and then with the COVID thing hitting, the pandemic, this is some real hope. And you brothers is on it, and the sisters that's on it too. I just want to show my love and appreciation for that. I know we can do that. That mall belongs to us. That 40 acres belongs to us.
Indeed.
That's our legacy for our children.
Thank you, sister. I got two
Just
pieces.
gonna say thank you.
The first is I have to lift up the sisters because they have been incredible in this entire fight, in this entire strategizing. And we've had, Dolores is the most prominent of the sisters. We've had incredible sisters, Dolores, Cherie, Jackie, that have been resources in our community. So myself and others, we brothers, Akili, Malcolm, Paul, Roland Wiley, we are humbled to have such capable women that have experience who are being now even given a greater opportunity to help continue the work that they've been doing within the community for a while. And the other piece, Tequila, did you have something? I saw your hand go up. You're muted. You're muted.
One of the questions that come up is the $130 million for the purchase, and then another $100 million for rehab. So you want to address some of that?
Yeah. But Sister Khadijah, you had a second question. If we could come.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Did you have a question, Sister Khadijah, that I wanted to make sure we mentioned?
Yeah, well, I just wanted to know if there was a possibility that we could launch a letter writing campaign as well, and maybe start a crowdfunding type of situation to raise funding to ensure that we are able to come up with these funds and reach out to the public. I've been calling everybody all morning and texting them and letting them know that you guys are here and to chime into this, because this is something that we must do. I'm a mall girl. That's my mall. That's to have it, So if we can, my understanding really is that it's going to be a situation where they haven't finalized the contract in terms of the deal. They have 6 months to close the deal, to consummate it, I should say. And that gives us some time right there with the current potential owner or buyer at this point. So if we can galvanize people in all types of organizations and groups, such as the Black Realist, they deal with, we need to be coupling with each other and different organizations together. And I think we're starting to do that. So I just appreciate you guys. Thank you so much.
We appreciate you, Sister Asada, Sister Khadijah. But we do have Sister Asada coming right back up. You're back online, sister.
Hello?
There you are. Welcome back.
Oh, you're right. One of the things that I wanted to bring up is that, the Destination Crenshaw is a project that Marquise Harris Dawson has been pushing, particularly in the Hyde Park area, and I think it's not going to extend past here up through to Hollywood. And efforts were made, just everywhere to build for that project without any real solid economic root for this community. And so I want to just say, how much do we want to, and by the way, it's a private project, okay? It is it's been largely funded with private money. And so a lot of effort was made on the part of the councilperson's office to, go scale the 7 C's to get money for that kind of a project. And so, and it's not a project that's necessarily going to be beneficial for this community unless we have a solid economic base. And so we just want to have you just kind of comment on that. How do we get that same kind of effort, for a project like this, as opposed to an art project that wasn't necessarily going to really have any solid economic base for our community?
And we know there are a lot of conversations that relate to Destination Crenshaw within our community, especially regarding the impact that it might have in the surrounding community. And I think even the council member in our last meeting talked about its effect being predicated on making sure that the housing around the community continue to be occupied by Black folk, Black and brown neighbors, but specifically Black folk. And so I think you've got to make that demand, and those who are, we just shared the information in case you were missing it on the, in case you didn't already have it within the Q&A, of people who have the access or the contact information of the council members, and we need to be in unity on this downtown Crenshaw project. So if you can throw something else within that, when talking and talking to them, please raise those issues. Akili, what else do we have coming from the Q&A? Because we're coming up on 8 minutes to close out. We were 20 minutes late, so we're going to end 20 minutes late.
Yeah, well, one was about the additional 100 million for rehab. I do want to share a couple of very quick numbers for CD 10, which is Herb Weston. The numbers is 213-743-7010. Don't let the mall be sold. Support downtown Crenshaw. Real simple. Don't let the mall be sold. Support downtown Crenshaw. For CD 8, Marquise Harris Dawson, 213-473-7008. Don't let the mall be sold. Support downtown Crenshaw. How do the rehab raise the additional, or is it additional $100 million for rehab?
And so now we've got South Central by South Central. And then I think we're going to close out with Sister Zarita, and we'll have some more action steps for folks to take. So South by South Central. You want to unmute yourself, please?
Now, yes.
There you are. We can hear you.
Can everybody hear me well?
Yes.
Thank y'all first and foremost for all the work y'all doing over on Crenshaw. For real. My name Cadmiel McAdoo. I'm one of the founding members of South Central by South Central, which is really engaged in the same work. A part of our mission is exactly what the name says, is building, our South Central community by, the South Central people. I'm born and bred here in South Central. I went to Audubon, went to Dorsey, graduated Berkeley. And so, have had the opportunity to kind of really see the gambit of a lot of different social spaces. So my question is, like, really with all hands on deck, and I don't want to change the focus of the conversation, but it is the same fight that we're involved in, or that really was the reason why we launched South Central by South Central, was because of the development happening at Vermont, Manchester, a piece of property that was burnt down in the riots. I mean, Vermont, Manchester is not as iconic as Crenshaw, but definitely a staple in South Central. And the land at the intersection was acquired by the county through eminent domain in the last couple of years, and there's a development plan that includes a metro transportation hub, a new boarding school, housing, and commercial retail. Our focus has very much been so in the same vein as Crenshaw Subway Coalition, and as gentrification is a systematic issue for our community, how can we get out of these community neighborhood silos and join our efforts across South Central so we can begin to address gentrification across the city as a whole, and not in a spot fire approach as developments arise? Thank you for the time.
Land trust.
You got that, McKinney?
Yeah, well, I was just going to say the land trust is a tool that has been developed, and a useful tool that can be applied to, one, taking land out of the hand, off the market, and out of the hands of speculators, people who are coming in to make a fast buck, paying folks and then rehabbing and then flipping it again. So the first thing is to deepen and expand the land trust approach. The second thing is and when we're learning, certainly I'm learning this, that the capital that exists among us can do a lot. And I think we've demonstrated that, brothers like yourself and the rest. So investing in ourselves and in our community.
Yes, brother. Thank you for the work you're doing down there. We are one South Central. And that's one of the reasons why this land trust is actually doesn't have specific geographic boundaries, so that we can include those that are within our community. Or even in the valley, for example. One of the key land trust board members is Sylvia. Her home is in the valley, and so we want to be able to do that while staying focused on being in the Crenshaw corridor. One of the key pieces before we move to Sarita to be the last comment. If you have not yet gotten your question in and your feedback in, please use that feature in the Q&A so that we can record your concerns, record your questions. Most importantly, though, please go to www.downtowncrenshaw.com so that you can sign up to be part of the movement, express your support for the project, stopping the sale to CIM and having community control so the community can build that with community wealth building principles. And then allow us to direct many of these dialogues and conversations in a geared fashion once we have your contact information, doing that community visioning and feedback. And so once again, fill out that question and comment if you aren't going to be able to get to yours today. And then sign up at downtowncrenshaw.com. Zarita Jones, Los Angeles Tenants Union Baldwin Lamert Crenshaw local founder. What you got for us, sister?
Well, I just wanted to say, as somebody that has been in the community for so many years, I am one of those graduates of Dorsey High, also put in my work and investment with my labor and my presence, being not only the manager of Albertsons, which was previously Lucky's, and during college, I was also manager of Boys Market that was on La Brea and Rodeo prior to the riots and the uprising. But I just wanted to let everybody know that we have to invest in our community. We have to see that vision. And the first thing that I see when I see a downtown Crenshaw with our mall as the hub is job creation. Job creation for our people, our community, the surrounding communities, that 60,000, that 40,000 that's marginalized with their rent payments and their housing payments. And I just wanted to make sure that everybody understands we have to see past getting the mall. We're going to get our mall. We're going to turn that into downtown Crenshaw, but we have to see the jobs. We have to see the growth. We have to see our businesses that are Black owner occupied, that are hiring our people, so we can have that empowerment and that stability. And I just wanted to say that, being an organizer, being with the Baldwin Lamert Crenshaw local of the Los Angeles Tenants Union, I am there, I am here to support any of the other groups. We need to get together, just like by South Central, how do you say it? South Central by South Central. I'm glad to know you out there, and we all just need to connect and get it done. Connect and get it done. And if we're not getting enough response, we need to go big and we need to go loud. Thank you,
sister. We love being in the battlefield, on the battlefield with you. And I want to, before I give it to Akili to close out, I want to thank the co-sponsors of this forum, the Black Community Clergy and Labor Alliance, Black Lives Matter Los Angeles, Liberty Community Land Trust, Christianity Center, African American Culture Center, us, Fannie Lou Hamer Institute, and the many others who have participated in this dialogue. We again can't apologize enough for the technical challenges, but you weathered through that with us to be part of this conversation, which is beginning today. And so Akili, close this out. Final points. What we got to do, Master Organizer?
Well, first of all, I also want to thank everybody who has been on the line with us. We had at one point over 360 people or more. So I want to thank you all for hanging with us. And I want to thank all the people who came on to share their information. What we wanted to do today was, one, provide you with information about what's happening, and two, provide you with a vision about what could happen. And that's what downtown Crenshaw is. That's the vision for what we see as a way to take over and determine our community ourselves. There's three things we're asking people to do. First, call your city council member. Don't let them all be so. Support downtown Crenshaw. That's all you have to say. You don't have to say, people are gonna say, what is downtown Crenshaw? Yeah, it's an idea, it's a vision, it's an aspiration. And we've all had these aspirations before. So you don't have to say no more than that. The second thing is, we want you to support us. I came on earlier to talk about how you can contribute to the Crenshaw Subway Coalition. One of the questions that was on the Q&A, does Crenshaw Subway Coalition get state, local, and federal funds? No. We depend on you. So go right now, and it doesn't matter how much, give to the Crenshaw Subway Coalition right now, because that's how we keep doing this. That's how we keep raising our voice. That's how we keep challenging and confronting the assumption that what exists ought to exist. So it's www.CrenshawSubwayCoalition.org, donate. thank you all very much. This was a great and substantive conversation. We are doing great things, and we will do greater things more so. And thank you all to all the participants who joined us and who shared their information. Donate. Damien, and let's wrap it up. And thank you all once again.